Good evening, Pueblo, Colorado, and welcome to this scheduled work session for Pueblo City Council. Today is Monday, March 2nd, 5:30 p.m., and I call our work session to order. First on our agenda, I'd like to acknowledge Brian McCain from the Chief of Staff. 5 minutes for city updates.
I'll be quick. So Pueblo Transit, thank you to everyone who attended the Transit Open House last Wednesday. We answered questions about zero emissions fleet, the transition to hybrid vehicles, and the future plans for a new site for Pueblo Transit. If you missed the open house, you can still learn more by visiting Pueblo Transit website at pueblo.us. Just go to the search and type in hybrid fleet and plan new transit facility. You can also take our survey and help us with this transition. Parks and Rec, El Centro is planning for the Easter celebration. They're seeking candy and plastic egg donations, which will be part of the free event on Saturday, April 4th. Games, crafts, and outdoor activities for all ages will be provided. If you want to donate to the event, candy and plastic eggs can be dropped off at 609 East 6th Street at El Centro. With that, it concludes my updates.
Thank you. Next on our agenda, the chair will acknowledge Mr. Gil Romero for lobby updates. See if on Zoom with us.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I'll recognize you for 30 minutes.
All right, thank you. We've got a number of bills to discuss with you. We'll try to go through them. Some are fairly complicated. You may want to ask us to present them or at least get you some talking points or bullet points on some of these bills. But thank you, Madam Chair. President Aliff, Mayor Graham, privileged to present to you tonight. I wanted to start out, and then I'm going to turn it over to my team to talk to you about some bills that we believe are really important bills, but have significant impact to Pueblo. I will tell you, we have completed 50 days of the legislative session. We have 70 to go. Bills are being introduced every single day. I will have to say, in my career at the legislature, I've never really, I think it's a record for a number of bills that we see that are really directly targeted to municipalities in terms of local control. I never thought that I would have to present to you a bill, but we got a question when we were at the Pueblo Chamber of Commerce breakfast on Saturday. I know many of you were at your retreat. You couldn't attend that, but I wanted to get it in front of you because I think you're going to hear a lot about it. It's being sponsored by our state senator, Nick Hendrickson, and I just wanted to make sure that you had the facts on this particular bill. It's Senate Bill 97. It would decriminalize adult commercial sexual activity. The bill requires the statewide decriminalization of commercial sexual activity among consenting adults. It declares that decriminalizing commercial sexual activity among consenting adults is a matter of statewide concern and expressly preempts statutory or home rule city, town, city, county, or county ordinances, resolutions, regulations, or codes criminalizing commercial sexual activity. It would take it completely out of Pueblo's hands. The bill repeals the state criminal offenses of prostitution, soliciting for prostitution, keeping a place of prostitution, patronizing a prostitute, and prostitute making display. It also repeals the offense of pandering when it involves knowingly arranging or offering to arrange a situation that permits a person to practice prostitution. The bill maintains a current state criminal penalty for pandering that involves menacing or criminal intimidation for pimping, but it changes terminology in those offenses from prostitution to commercial sexual activity. When this bill was originally introduced, we thought, we weren't sure exactly, what statewide concern this promoted, but it is going to be scheduled for a hearing, we think, in the next couple of weeks. I have stopped predicting bills that I think probably won't make it out of the committee. This bill is scheduled to be heard in Senate Judiciary There's a potential that it could get onto the floor of the Senate for debate. So I wanted to bring that particular bill to your attention, and obviously we'll want some input from the city. With that, I'll turn it over to my two colleagues to talk about some other concerns we have.
Good evening, City Council members. Alec Romero with Capital Success Group. There's a few different bills we wanted to put on your radar for this evening. A few of them are in your report, a couple are not. But the first one is House Bill 26-1275. This is titled the Visible and Accountable Policing Act. It does several things. First, it prohibits peace officers from concealing their identity except in undercover operations or specific hazardous situations. And second, it expands the crime of impersonating a peace officer to include performing law enforcement duties while concealing identity. Third, it establishes state criminal jurisdiction over federal officers who violate Colorado law regardless of federal immunity claims. Fourth, it requires local officers to intervene if federal officers use excessive force. And fifth, it directs the Colorado Peace Officers Standard and Training Board to deny certification to current or former ICE and CPB employees. And finally, it mandates additional training for all officers on immigration law, jurisdictional limits, duty to intervene, and excessive force policies. So for Pueblo, the most direct impacts would be workforce and operational. So the post-certification restriction would prevent the department from hiring officers with prior ICE or CPB experience. So this significantly narrows the hiring pool for officers. Secondly, the training mandates would create additional administrative and budget considerations. And then the duty to intervene requirement involving federal officers could create dangerous situations for officers confronting federal agents. Just for some context, the bill is opposed by the Colorado Fraternal Order of Police, as well as the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police. The next bill is Senate Bill 26-129, Mitigate Impacts of Tax Increment Financing. This bill was brought to our attention from some city officials from the Pueblo Urban Renewal Authority. They flagged some concerns regarding this bill. And so for background, urban renewal is a tool that communities use to revitalize deteriorating or underdeveloped areas through tax increment financing, or TIF. So a base property value is established when the plan is adopted. As redevelopment occurs and property values increase, the incremental tax growth above that base is used to pay for public improvements like roads, utilities, environmental cleanup, or site preparation that make private investment feasible. So importantly, TIF, it doesn't raise taxes, but it redirects new tax growth created by that redevelopment to help fund the infrastructure that enables that redevelopment. So in Colorado, this operates under what courts have upheld for decades as the but-for doctrine, meaning that incremental revenue would not exist but for the urban renewal project. So legally, TIF is treated as capturing new growth, not diverting existing revenue. So Senate Bill 26-129, it makes two primary changes. First, it requires any taxing entity whose revenue would be included in a TIF plan, such as the school district or county, to either certify the impact report or file a technical rebuttal within 45 days. If they do not respond, the report is presumed certified. Currently, impact reports are shared and negotiated, but there is no statutory deadline requiring formal certification. So this formalizes that process. Second, beginning in 2027, LCS staff would have to publish an annual statewide report quantifying how much property tax revenue would have gone to education if not for TIF. So the concerns from the URAs that we're hearing is primarily relates around two different things. It's going to add procedural requirements that could introduce additional complexity into project timelines. And then the state education reporting requirement component, which they believe frames TIF as diverting revenue from schools despite the longstanding but-for legal principle. So again, currently there's no statutory deadline requiring taxing entities to formally certify or rebut an impact report. The process is collaborative and timelines are typically driven by project negotiations and financing schedules. So this bill introduces a 45-day deadline and converts non-response into presumed certification. So while 45 days may be manageable in many cases, it formalizes what has historically been a pretty flexible process and could add complexity, particularly for larger or more technical projects. That one's a bit complicated. So again, if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to send any more information regarding that bill. I'll turn it over to Ryan.
Thanks, Alec. Ryan Romero with Capital Success Group. And I first want to apologize. We're here at the Capitol, so if my audio gets a little funky, please let me know. The first bill I have to present is House Bill 26-1048. The title is Back to School Sales Tax Holiday. A similar bill was brought last year, and the city supported it. It's being sponsored by Rep. Winter from Trinidad, and part of his district touches Pueblo. So the bill establishes a temporary sales and use tax holiday for back to school items purchased primarily for individuals under 21 years old, occurring over specific 48-hour weekends in late July. It would be 2027, 2028, and 2029. Back to school items include articles of clothing, school supplies, and learning aids, each subject to specific price caps for exemption eligibility. The bill also permits local governments to adopt identical tax holidays and requires the Department of Revenue and state auditor to collect data and evaluate the exemption's effectiveness in providing tax relief to families. The next bill is Senate Bill 26-080. Title is Cradle to Career Grant Program Creation. This one's being sponsored by the President of the Senate, Senator Coleman. The bill establishes a grant program to connect children and youth with high quality educational and extracurricular programming and families with health and social services to improve prenatal and early childhood outcomes, student achievement, and workforce readiness. Eligible entities include local governments, education providers, higher education institutions, tribes, and nonprofit organizations, serving in areas where at least 30% of households with children have incomes at or below 200% of the poverty line. An advisory board will approve grant recipients and develop program guidelines, and the program will be funded through gifts, grants, and donations with limited general fund appropriations. And just given the current budget situation that the state is in, this grant program probably won't get a ton of funding, but the sponsor's intent is that we create the program now, and in later years when the state budget improves, we would hopefully be able to add more to the grant program. And then last but not least, HB 26-1140, the title is Local Government Impact Hearings. So this bill would establish a process for local government impact hearings during the regular legislative session, beginning with the 2027 session. Each of the 4 legislative leaders, the House Speaker, the House Minority Leader, Senate President, and Senate Minority Leader, would select up to 5 bills in their chamber to receive a dedicated 1 to 2 hour hearing period at the start of the committee hearing, during which local governments and organizations representing them could testify without normal time restrictions. The legislative council staff must facilitate these hearings and include them on committee calendars. And they must have implementation procedures by December 1st, 2026. So just, often the bills that come before committee have such a huge impact to local governments, whether it's municipalities or counties. And the idea behind this bill would be to give some dedicated time at the beginning of each session to pick essentially the 5 most complicated bills and give them some extra hearing time to allow experts from the city or county or, whatever the local government is, give them unrestricted time to explain the complications behind whatever the 5 bills would be. So it's a creative idea to give local governments more time to explain implications behind bills. So with that, we'd be happy to take any questions. And as Alex said, I think most of these bills we discussed were on the report we sent Friday. However, a couple were introduced afterwards, and they will be on our next report. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, just quickly, a couple of points on the Cradle to Career Grant Program. One of the consultants that's working on that is former president of the Senate, Leroy Garcia, and former, I think, city council person who's providing some expertise and assistance on that particular bill. And then this last bill that Ryan described, it's in its infancy as an idea, but this is something that we've been asking for a lot. They do fiscal impact, but as we've seen with a lot of these law enforcement bills that have significant impact on local municipalities to take care of their public safety issues, I think this is something that's been really long in coming, and I hope that the bill passes and it provides a robust opportunity for cities to come in and say, you can't mandate these particular programs on us and not fund them or take our advice or expertise and how they impact our city. With that, Madam Chair and members of City Council, we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. I will open up, the chair will recognize and open up time for any counselors who might have questions on any of the bills that were presented. Any questions? Nope. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen, for your
Okay,
time.
thank you for the time, Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next on our agenda, the chair will recognize Miss Lisa Johns, Arena Van Dusen, and Lindsay Vigna from Pikes Peak Humane Society. Thank you, ladies. And the chair will recognize you for your presentation for 15 minutes.
Thank you to City Council and the Mayor's Office for our time here today. We would like to share our 2025 successes with the Pueblo Community Animal Shelter and the animals in Pueblo. So my name is Erin Van Dusen. I am the Director of Operations for the Pueblo location of the Humane Society of the Pikes Peak region. Next to me is Lindsay Vigna, Assistant Director of Animal Law Enforcement. And when I've wrapped up, I will invite Lisa Johns, our Director of Vet Services, to discuss our humane work in our community. Oh, here we go. So today we will start with shelter operations, including vet services updates, and transition to animal law enforcement to talk about our successes again in 2025. And then we will wrap up with a forward look at 2026. So starting with shelter operations, these are all statistics that I have emailed over as well. These are our numbers for 2025. So we took in over 8,000 animals. In the next slide, I'm going to spend some time talking about our increases and decreases as compared to 2024. But before I do that, what questions do you have about any of the language on the slide or any of the numbers?
What questions? Say that again.
Are there any questions about the numbers or data on this slide so far before I move on? Again, none of this should be a surprise. This is all information that we emailed out in January of this year. So really what's meaningful is how does this compare to how we've been doing? So we've been talking for several years now about a large increase in animals year over year. I'm very happy to share that we only saw a 3% increase in animals needing care in 2025 as compared to 2024. The number of dogs that needed care even went down by 121 animals, which is something that we really celebrated and really helped with our operations in 2025. Despite the fact that dog intakes went down, our dog adoptions really went up in 2025. So we're very, very happy to share that we adopted out an additional 250 dogs, which resulted in a 10% increase in adoptions out of the Pueblo location. as a result, we did not need to rely on as many outside partners to assist with animals. So our transfers, so that's animals moving from organization to organization, went down, which we're very proud of. And then pretty closely tied is the intakes and the animals reunited with their owner. So the intakes, so you can see right there that the decrease in dogs reunited with their owner is pretty consistent with the decrease in dogs coming in. So fewer dogs are coming in as a stray to reunite with their owners. All right. Any questions about the sheltering data before we discuss our customer service? Okay. Yes. Please.
The chair will recognize Brett Boston, our Counselor Boston.
Just curious, what animals do you most see in the other category? Chickens?
No, it's such a good question that I really should have just thought to call out. So we took in, there was a gentleman that had 87 birds. These were mostly parakeets. He lived in an apartment where he was evicted. So our animal law enforcement team was able to impound those birds, keep them safe. He did come and reclaim the birds that were really bonded with him, the macaw and the cockatoo and those kind of animals. And then we rehomed the 60-something parakeets. Yeah,
Sweet.
good question.
Just real quickly, I just want to say, if you want to do the presentation and then we'll have some
Oh,
time for
yes.
questions after.
I'm so sorry about that. We
No
have
worries.
multiple people presenting, so I'm trying to capture the questions that would come to me,
Oh.
but we can do it all at the end. I apologize for that.
Okay, no worries. Thank you.
Volunteer hours. So we really enjoy sharing our volunteer hours and successes because this directly relates to the contract and the funding needed to be able to run the animal services. So very, very proud to share that we saw a 34% increase in foster hours in 2025, 21% increase in shelter hours, which really, when it came down to it, resulted in more than 2,000 additional dog walks in 2025 as compared to 2024. But a lot of our volunteer statistics have doubled and quadrupled. So we are working really, really hard to continue to build a volunteer base to keep the contract as low as possible for the services needed for the animals. And then I'd also like to pull out a few customer service survey results. So we have started to send customer service surveys for all of our services that we provide in Pueblo. I've pulled out some of the comments just from November and December of last year. And I also included the zip code so that you had an idea about where in the community that these comments are coming from. We have provided a copy of this presentation, so I will let you guys look at those comments on your own unless you would like to pause for any extended amount of time. But with these comments, the biggest thing I'd like to say is that we're overwhelmingly getting positive feedback in our customer service surveys. So our NPS is pretty consistently at about a 70, which is world class. And then with that, I will go ahead and hand it over to Lisa to discuss vet services.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Johns, and I am the Director of Veterinary Services, and I'm just going to go over some highlights from 2025. So these are our year-end statistics. You will see that in the Pueblo shelter, our veterinary services are up 22% in DVM exams and 8% in spay-neuter. I attribute this to the fact that we were able to staff the shelter with a vet 7 days a week. Starting in March of last year. And then Pueblo Wellness Clinic, and that is our mission work. So that is fully funded by HSPPR and their donors. So public spay neuter, oh, and of course grants. So public spay neuter is up by 55%. Public vaccination and public wellness is down a little bit. The reason why that is because we added additional spay and neuter days. So we lost a couple of wellness days. Our goal would be to hopefully get that back up at some point in the future.
Mrs. Johns, may I interrupt you just for a moment? It sounds like if you can just pull your microphone and speak a little closer, sounds like it's, no worries. Thank you.
We also hosted Pet Fest in 2025. That was in October. We worked with the Colorado State Fairgrounds and we were able to secure a location there. We spayed and neutered 95 dogs and 131 cats and vaccinated 389 animals over 2 days at low cost. Vaccines were free and surgeries were very low cost. With the PetSmart incubator grant that we've talked about previously, they have targeted the east side of Pueblo. These are some of the things that we have learned about the community in the east side of Pueblo through surveys and focus groups. Vaccines, emergency care, pet food supplies, grooming, behavioral training, all of these things are needs that community has identified to us.
Awesome, thank you. And Lindsay Vina with Animal Law Enforcement. I'm going to provide you all with just a couple of stats just to kind of highlight how our team ended 2025. Starting off with just some basic statistics. So as you can see, 2025 was pretty busy for our small but mighty team here in Pueblo. Just under 15,000 total calls for service. Over 1,400 dangerous animal calls, or anytime a citizen is reaching out to us for assistance regarding an animal that's displaying some type of threatening behavior. 534 injured animal calls. Most of those are, animals hit by car, maybe dogs that have gotten into a scuffle, or dog bite attacks as well on other animals. 484 increased patrols. That's one I always want to highlight. So those are more proactive efforts that officers take in some of the neighborhoods that we know, we typically have a high call volume in. So they're trying to spend more time in those areas. Over 3,000 responses to welfare concerns. So this would encompass our cruelty to animals calls, a lot of shelter investigations and water investigations, things like that. And then last on that list, 121 agency assists. So those are times when partnering agencies, whether it be the police department or the sheriff's office, we even get calls from, Black Hills Energy, anytime there's a dog on property and they're reaching out to us for help. And then the last slide I had, I just wanted to highlight that our team participated in 18 public community events here in Pueblo. That's always like a staff favorite. We actually had to move to a system where officers put their name in a hat and we draw names of who gets to participate because they really enjoy those opportunities. And then we had 32 large-scale impoundments in 2025. So what that is anytime that we are responding to a call in which we are impounding 8 or more animals at a time. So if you can think about, like, these are our hoarding cases. And in 2025, we actually tripled our responses to those situations over the same time in 2024. So it was a pretty busy year for our team.
I'm just going to go over quickly a forward look into 2026 and what we are looking to accomplish, some of the things we have on the horizon. So again, with the PetSmart incubator grant that we got last year, they provided us funds to really get into the East Side community and ask questions through surveys and focus groups about what their needs were. The barriers that they identified in the community, I don't think that they're really surprising to most people with the state of how expensive vet care can be these days. But cost of services, payment required up front, no payment plans, and then lack of vet clinics and support services in that area. And then I think the most interesting thing that we learned was that over 50% of people surveyed in that area, that was 11,250 people in that community, in that little neighborhood. And we did 264 surveys with 2 focus groups. And 55% think that less than $99 is what they could afford for a dog spay and neuter. 53% think less than $49 is what they can afford for a cat spay and neuter. And in some cases, that doesn't even cover our costs. So it's very telling. You know, we're trying to figure out how to meet people where they're at and help them out. And then finally, we did get notified today that we were awarded the PetSmart Incubator Grant for this year as well. So that gives us a little more money to provide services such as vaccines and spay neuter clinics, not just food. So we were very excited about that. We vaccinated 105 animals on our first vaccine clinic in January. We held another one in February, also on the east side, partnering with a church. And February, we vaccinated 73 animals. Finally, I'll just mention that we also received word that we got additional funds from another grant. We don't have a lot of information on that at this time, but we hope to have a press release coming out soon about that. That's all, unless you
That's
have
it.
questions.
Thank you, ladies. I will now open up for questions. Here we'll acknowledge Counselor Latino.
Talked about the east side. And basically the majority of the conversation had to do with the east side. And basically we're talking about the lower east side. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you said there are how many animals that you?
So PetSmart Charities, it was their grant. And so they like to focus on like a small neighborhood, right? They feel like you can't change the entire city or the entire county with, you know, limited funds. So how their grant works is basically they help you identify a community that they feel would be helpful to get these services. So they identified the east side along with us. In that little neighborhood area that we've kind of marked out, it's kind of like a triangle area. There's 11,250 residents in that area approximately.
So talk to me about the area. Are we talking the east side of the 4th Street Bridge or the north side? Yeah, the east side of the 4th Street Bridge. Are we talking south of Plaza Verde Park? Are we talking?
So it's like 7th Street kind of over. Does that make sense? I'm really
7th Street
terrible.
over.
Yeah.
So
I'm
we're
terrible with
7th Street,
directions.
meaning we're going 7th Street north.
Yes, it's like a triangle. So
Right, it's north.
yeah.
There wasn't anything on the south side of the 4th Street? Plaza
No.
Verde Park. We're talking about basically El Centro de Quinta Sol in that area.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes, all of that area.
And how about further north, or excuse me, further east and west to Bradford Park? You are nothing in that area?
No, I don't believe it extends
Okay.
into that area.
And nothing at Mitchell Park either?
No,
So just that one specific area.
correct.
And again, their needs.
So some of the things that they've identified are the fact that they don't have clinics, veterinary clinics in that area. Barriers were cost, the fact that there are no payment plans. They also talked about when you do call a vet, sometimes it takes a long time to get an appointment.
Transportation.
Transportation, when we've held our last 2 vaccine clinics in that area, we've had a lot of people actually walk to us. So they're walking to us from their homes to get their animals vaccinated. So transportation, language in some cases.
So they're walking, let me get this right. You say that they walk to you, you're having a clinic in a certain area. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, so we've partnered with City Church. It's a church kind of on the corner around Kingston, I believe.
Yeah.
And it we've had 2 vaccine clinics there so far. So we had one in January. We vaccinated 103 animals. We were there from 9 to 4, and a lot of people in the neighborhood were walking to to bring their animals to us. And then in February, we did the same thing. Again, we were there from 9 to 4. We vaccinated 73 animals. It's a lot of word of mouth too. It happens a little organically. People will come and see us there. They'll get their animals vaccinated and then they'll go call their mom or their grandmother and they'll come over as well. So, yeah.
There's a Lower East Side there, obviously, also. I mean, I'm talking the area to the south of 4th Street and the area where Plaza Verde Park is. There's a lot of older people in that area and they have animals as well.
Mhm.
So basically, at this point in time, they're not being served.
Well, I mean, we are having events. They can come to our events. I don't believe it's very far as people coming into those
Yeah,
areas.
they can still access those services at those events. I think what Lisa is saying is that this grant was just the research that was done was very specific to that location, that part of the east side. And so even though we know there's a need in other areas of the east side, it was just the research that was really conducted in that area.
You have to understand that there's a lot of people in that area that are senior laden citizens. They don't carry cell phones around, okay?
Mhm.
At the most, they have a TV. And you know, again, their ability to communicate and to receive communication is based on word of mouth. And so that's my concern, okay? I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's invaluable to that community, to the whole city, as a matter of fact. And the county which you serve as well. So again, but there's that certain area in that district where the people they don't have cell phones. Okay. The best that they can do in some instances is have a TV with the basic channels. So
Councilor Latino?
maybe that's something that we can, talk about.
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I feel like there are other, we could definitely do some sort of pop-up clinic or mobile clinic in that area. It may just not be, we might not be able to use the PetSmart funds for that, if that makes any sense.
I mean, I've toured your facility some years back and I continue to support what you're doing. It's very important to this community.
Thank
And
you.
so anything that we can do, I personally can do, I'm willing to help you in any way.
Thank you.
But if you can help us with that, that would be great.
Yeah.
We can talk if you'll contact me or you, whatever. Okay,
Absolutely.
thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Council. The chair will recognize Councilor Gomez.
Yeah, I was just curious. I was looking up some facts in reference to utilization of veterinary interns. And it's kind of surprising when I looked at the urban areas and the percentages and they choose to get into veterinary schools is estimated to be 65 to 70%. Come down to Little Old Pueblo, it's 20%.
Yeah.
You go a little farther than that, you're down to 10% in some of the smaller communities. So can we put some emphasis, maybe, I don't know if you can. I just think you got veterinarians, I always get that mixed. You got veterinarians in the waiting and maybe we can attract them at a lower level and say, look, we need help.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a huge population with animals,
Yeah, absolutely.
but I don't know if you probably have considered that, but I just wanted to I was kind of shocked by the numbers.
Yeah.
But-
Yeah,
Yeah.
we certainly, we're definitely looking at that. And I know last year we hosted like a coalition where we invited all of the local existing veterinarians in to just kind of network and try to collaborate on what are some ways we can attract people to this community because we know there really is a need. I know the organization's also been discussing with Pueblo Community College on the different programs that are offered to kind of support those professions. So it's definitely something that we're still looking at.
They're even looking at Colorado repayment loans for veterinary interns,
Mhm.
which is kind of good because I really think you need it, but I
Yeah,
appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The chair will recognize Councilor Dante.
So I noticed that you had a death statistic there. On the deaths, how many are what you would call road kills compared to drop-offs? Or do you have those numbers?
I'm gonna turn this over to Erina because she'll know more about those operations than I will. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So when you're looking at the statistics, and this is something that I could make sure to email you separately if you'd like, Dante, I don't know if you got the January statistics. But when we submit our quarterly statistics, we actually outline shelter euthanasias, and then it's a separate line item that talks about the animals that were deceased upon arrival.
But that would include both, right?
No, so what you saw on the screen was for shelter humane euthanasia. So it's
Oh,
a
okay.
separate item that
Okay.
looks at animals that come in already deceased.
Okay. And do you have a lot of returns after adoption?
I don't know the statistics off the top of my head right now, but I'd be happy to get those to you. One thing that I will say is that we do practice an open adoption policy, which means that we trust our community, which also means that we're very vocal and accepting if it doesn't work out. So we are encouraging community members that if the adoption is not successful, that's okay. We have staff members that maybe take them home and it's not successful overnight either. We don't know that it's automatically going to be a fit. So our bigger commitment is about making sure that animal always has a safe place to be, whether it
Right.
does or doesn't work
Right.
out.
I just remember back in COVID, there were a lot of adoptions and then there were a lot of returns. So.
Yeah, yeah. And that was a really interesting national statistic that the media really liked to grab onto. But as far as when you really narrow down the statistics, the adoption returns actually decreased post-COVID. They didn't increase. So where we did see an increase nationally of animals being returned was for small animals like guinea pigs and gerbils and that sort of thing, which I think makes sense when your kids are home bored. They're going to get a little pet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
The chair will recognize Counselor Boston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Her question made me kind of just think about our new contract and how we took over some of the services. Is there any data that you guys have been able to compile yet that would show what you've been able to do with the extra time or extra resources now that we're kind of took a little bit of the burden off? Or is that not something that you have compiled yet?
I don't think, if you're referring to like the deceased animal pickup, I mean, already I can tell you thus far in 2026, our team has already had one additional large scale impound, and then we're actually prepping for one for the end of the week. And so that tends to be consuming a lot more of our officers' time. As you saw in the slide, I think it was 2025, we did just over 650 deceased animal pickups. So I don't know. I'm hoping that's not a trend we're going to continue on with the hoarding cases, but that seems to be the hot topic, if you will.
Okay. And then do you guys have a day of the week that specifically the most adoptions happen? Potentially Tuesday after Mark's shout outs?
So I actually ran our length of stay report last week for Pueblo. The average amount of time that animals have been in care as of last week, for cats, it was between 4 and 5 days, and for dogs, it was between 3 and 4 days. So they're getting adopted really quickly. And Councilmember Aliff, thank you so much for what you're doing to help promote that. For a statistical answer to your question, that generally coincides with when school is out. So usually it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday is when we see the highest adoptions.
Thank you.
Counselors, any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, thank you, ladies, for coming in. Thank you for all you do for our city and for our animal friends. We appreciate your service.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming and being with us this evening.
Yeah, thank you for your
you.
time this evening.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Up next on our agenda, I will invite George Concilia with Friends of City Park for an update on the bathhouse project and grant. You want to come on up, George? You're welcome. The chair will recognize you for 15 minutes for your presentation.
Thank you. Just real quick, I'd like to commend the group that just announced. I drive the streets of Pueblo often, and I have picked up a lot of strays and taken them to their facility. And over the last 12 months, I don't know if this is coincidence, but I don't see as many strays, quite frankly. So something's working. So I commend them. Keep up the good work. All right, guys, I'm back. I don't want to bore you guys with too much here, so I'll try and go through this fairly swiftly. There are new council members, so I'd like to just give a quick kind of background. You know, we're friends of City Park. We've been fighting to save the historic bathhouse located by the tennis courts in City Park. These are some historic photos. We did receive the landmark, the local landmark designation at the end of last year with the former council. This set us up so that we can now apply for grants that are under historical kind of context, and that opens that avenue up. We're very much ready to get started with this project. We want to get this done, give the area something to be proud of, and just kind of move on with everyone's lives. So just real quickly, who we are: group of volunteers. We're passionate about saving this particular property. Experts in our respective fields. These range from engineering to construction, marketing, etc. And really what we're, one of the things that I think is cool about our project, and there's some proof in the pudding here, is we're really looking to collaborate with a large network of people to get this project done. And that's a circle that includes both suppliers, laborers, different types of people that are in the construction industry. And those are relationships that we already have, and we're looking to leverage those so that we can make this a project that is both efficiency cost-wise, but also the thought is that we'll have a lot of people that are contributing to this project, be it in donations or just having some type of say. And the thought there is that this will really make this successful because there's a lot of people that are looking at the success of this overall project. I'm coming in here tonight somewhat under rush circumstances, so I'd like to thank Chair Gomez for getting me in here. But I've got a couple of requests, and those stem from a few things, but primarily it goes back to us applying for this particular grant with History Colorado. There is a grant deadline coming up on April 1st with a pre-deadline for the letter of intent, which is on March 18th. And this is a grant that we really want to apply for. We don't want to kick the can down the road any further. I think everybody up here is sick of seeing me in this seat, and we can hopefully minimize those visits moving forward once we kind of get on to the next phase. And we are, I would say, at the top of the arc, and we've kind of come a long way since this all started. But we received the landmark designation, which allows us to go after these grants. So we're here asking tonight a couple of things, and one I believe will come up on a resolution your next meeting on Monday, which will allow our group, Friends of City Park, to apply for this grant with History Colorado, and also the letter of intent on March 18th. This is an important one. This is the largest grant that we've kind of targeted. We've discussed this multiple times. The grant size goes between $50,000 and $250,000, and it requires a 25% match. That match money will come from our group, self-donated money. We're not asking the city for any funds to go toward this project. And the big thing here is that we really just want to get this thing started and get it done with, quite frankly. So we are also talking with the administration. We'd like to thank Mayor Graham as well as Ms. Sykes. We have discussed continuing our agreement with the city. That's another big step so that we can really take the next steps of establishing our nonprofit as a 501c3. This is important because people that donate money, that want to donate money, like to get the tax write-off for that. We need the 501c3 status to get that. We really need a signed agreement with the city so that we can put these steps in place and move forward. So that's a request. Ms. Sykes, as well as the mayor, have been very cooperative with that, and I believe we'll be discussing further this week. And another request that we'll have is to provide access to our group to the property so that we can firm up bids with the licensed contractors. Backing up just slightly, going after this large grant, ultimately there will be about $315,000 after the cash match. And the plan with all of those initial funds will be primarily to go towards exterior work around the property. There's some stabilization that will be done on the foundation, different areas of the water mitigation plan, which include gutter and roof work, site planning so that we can move the water away from the building, and a couple of different items so that we can take advantage of this money. Another big thing is so we can keep the facility in operation. There are ongoing tennis tournaments and it is used for summer programming. So we'd like to coordinate as much as possible with the city so that our construction doesn't inhibit the continual use of the facility and it can be a fairly seamless process. Just to touch on our timeline, again, this is really in an effort to get this thing moved forward and ultimately finalized. So just real briefly, the couple ones to take note on would be the April 1 deadline for this grant application. In between that time, we'd like to establish this either lease agreement or memorandum of understanding with the city and our group. We hope to be awarded this grant, which we will find out on June 15th. We expect to have an agreement in place prior to that, and we'll immediately start work once the funds are awarded. So again, not looking to drag this out any longer than it already has. We'd like to complete all of phase 1's work, probably in a 2 to 3 month span. Again, this is focusing on the exterior of the property, keep the interior operable. And then there's another opportunity to apply for this particular grant. You can do 2 rounds per year, up to $250,000 per round. Apply for the April round, complete the exterior work, apply for the October round. Hope to be awarded that funding in mid-December, and then we would be on to finishing the rest of the project, which would encompass all of the interior work. And ultimately be done with this project, and everybody will enjoy a nice new tennis building. So just some notes on the timeline as well. We're not going to be waiting for these grants to be established to go out and raise funds. We intend to raise funds immediately. We've already gotten several commitments, but we really need to sign agreements so that we can firmly say to people, please donate so that we can get this project done, and they'll have confidence that we have the ability or we've got the agreement to do so. So as soon as that agreement is struck, we will be out hitting the road looking for funds so we can get this project done. We've got a rough cost of about $760,000 to complete the overall project. Again, they come in tranches of $250,000 for the grant, plus 25%, so about $62,000 for our contribution. We can roughly get the project done with just the 2 rounds of the grant funding. We do expect to raise much more funds. We've had several conversations with people that are interested in giving fairly larger donations. We're excited to get that process going. All that we really need is to get this agreement established, and we can start to move the ball forward. Again, just we plan to minimize the downtime. We don't want to interrupt the services that are ongoing over there. It's important that the public restrooms are present, obviously. If there is a circumstance where they may interfere in our proposal, we plan to provide porta potties, ancillary types of restroom facilities so that there are services on site for when people do need them in the event that the primary building is shut down. Once we're done with construction, presumably middle of summer next year, it goes into full service. There's no downtime there. Open it up, let the kids enjoy it, make it something for everybody to be proud of. What we had proposed, and we're open to changes here. This is something that had been thrown out there with a 3-year term where we manage the project, we get the construction done, and then we would put in place some operational types of plans so that this facility will be successful. And that's partnering with some long-term sponsorships, not big dollars, but if we could put together $10,000 to $20,000 in annual operating funds for 3 to 5 year period, we know that will greatly help the overall facility, both for the public and anybody that ultimately uses it. And ultimately, we'll be giving this back to the city, minimize the costs, make this a very efficient building to use, easy to clean, easy to maintain, easy to keep secure and safe, most importantly, and cheap to operate. One thing that had been mentioned and kind of curious on, and it's a worthy note, and I just wanted to bring it up, is we don't have approved plans with the Southern Colorado Building Department as of now. The reason that we don't have them approved is because we're still waiting on confirmation that you guys like our plan. And the graphic is our updated revised drawings. We had gone back and forth prior to the landmarking last year due to fixture count, so the number of toilets. We adjusted our plan. We've got enough toilets in there that we do meet the specifications set by Southern Colorado Building Department that has been agreed upon. But we held off on getting these drawn because things can take time, and it can take even more time if we have to go back and revise the drawings or resubmit them. So the goal is to field some feedback from you guys if there is any. If you'd like to see things differently, we're totally open to changes, but we want to get these plans finalized. We want to finish our architectural drawings, submit these to the building department, get them approved so that once the grant funds are approved and we're ready to move forward, there's nothing that's stopping us from doing that. So Southern Colorado Building Department, to their credit, they're kind of stand on the 14 days for approvals. So we've got some time between then and now to get this figured out. Again, it's a couple months until the grant would be approved. That being said, we don't want a lot of this to kind of wait in limbo. So we'd like, if there are thoughts or things that we can add, please tell us. We are not a line in the sand type of group here. We're looking to work collaboratively, and we want this to be a real success for all stakeholders. And that's our group, you guys, the city of Pueblo, the folks at the tennis facility that use this area, the people at the park. So really all stakeholders. And to that note, we came up with the design here based on the RFP that was put out last year. Parks Department did express what they need within this facility. We did incorporate all of those needs and then some. But again, we're open to modifications should there be, but we're excited to get these plans fully approved and move forward. Just a couple graphics here, guys. This is what a helical pier is, just in case you're curious. We'll be utilizing a couple of those on this, what would be the south corner, to just shore up that area that's seen a little bit of settling. And again, a lot of the work that we're going to be focusing these first dollars towards will be along the exterior, get this foundation stabilized for the next 100 years so that there's not another conversation like this, hopefully down the road. One thing that has been discussed heavily we've been in contact very consistently with History Colorado. That's the entity that gives out this grant. They visited the property. They feel that it would be a very strong candidate to receive these grant dollars. Again, this is a competitive grant, so they can't go out there and say that, yes, you will be getting them. But given the nature of the project, the public interest that it's received, and also the need that it provides, this is at the end of the day a public restroom, and I think it's important that we provide these facilities. So it provides a tangible need. And it's to a large facility. This is during the 4A women's tournament over this past season, and it highlights the amount of people that do use this facility on given circumstances. So for those reasons, we feel that we've got a very strong case to receive those grant dollars. And really, we're here tonight to field any questions that you might have and prep for the resolution that'll be coming up on Monday to allow our group, Friends of City Park, to apply for this grant. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. The chair will recognize Councilor Latino.
Thank you. George, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your hard work. Obviously, that's historic. That's an historic venue. And that's something we don't want to lose. And I want to thank you for what you've done, Mr. Verner's done, and what the committee has done to enhance, to maintain, and to upgrade that facility. It's history in this community that we do not want to lose. It's part of the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, that goes all the way back to the 1930s. So have you reached out and received any support from the grant writing department of the city of Pueblo?
So I have spoken with Ms. Martinez. We have gone back and forth on this particular grant and on some other grants that might be available. They have been supportive. It does seem like there might be some other avenues that they could possibly enlighten us to other grants that might be available. So yes, we have been in discussion, not extensively recently. Again, I don't want to put more, I don't want to put the turd in somebody's pocket, so to speak. So we're looking to do all this work ourselves. We're applying for the grant. We're going to write the grant. We're going to, Gary Trujillo, who a lot of you are familiar with, he'll be helping heavily with writing of the grant, but we're not looking to burden the city with this project. So
We're not gonna, and George, I appreciate your concern, your sensitivity to the city's funding at this point in time. But there's 200,000 grants that are available out there. And we have one grant writer. And obviously she's doing the best job that she can, but we want to make sure that you're getting the support that you need for the project that you've taken on under your care, you and Brett Verna and some of the others, and what you're trying to do. And so I think it's very important that the city jumps into this, from the Parks Department and its directors to the city, the mayor and the city council to help move this project forward and to enhance this community. That park is a treasure. And that bathhouse and the tennis courts, obviously. And again, this is not about me, but having been an athletic director in the largest school system in the state and knowing that the state tennis tournaments are held down here, it's important because people coming from the northern part of the state and from all four quadrants of the state come into this community, and they obviously they see what's going on here. And that park being the main attraction, and because of the tennis courts itself, is an integral part of what people perceive to be Pueblo. And so it's important to me, and I'm sure my colleagues feel the same way. Pueblo has to present a strong image in what it does and how it's looked at from all over the state as well as the country. And I think by doing what you're doing, it brings that forward. So I appreciate it. And I think the council and the mayor's office, the Parks and Recreation Department, we need to work together to make sure that it's the best, better than all the rest.
and just to touch on that, we're big on the collaboration effort here. So we'll take all the help and assistance we can get, but you're absolutely right. You get one chance for a first impression. And I think this particular facility is unique in many ways, but one of the most unique is what Joe touched on, Council Latino, excuse me. It hosts the 4A state tournament. I don't believe we host any other state tournaments here for high school. I could be wrong, and Coach Ted might be able to help me out there. But we host the 4A men's and women's tournament in this particular location. It's a big deal, and I encourage all of you to try and take a look at it when those tournaments come up. But we have hundreds of people from all throughout the state, primarily up north, and tennis is primarily a well-to-do sport, just the nature of it. So we have an opportunity here to showcase that we got our crap together. And I think it's an opportunity that we should take advantage of. And it's something that we can do that's very unique and very neat. And I took a lot of time to speak with the people that go to that facility from those schools up north, and they think it's damn cool that we have this particular type of building, because what they see up north is not like that. And we have to lean into what makes us special here. And I think it's a really good opportunity to differentiate us. So I appreciate that, Counselor.
Thank you. I'd like to acknowledge, the chair will acknowledge Counselor Hernandez.
Hey, George, how are you? So the total cost of the project is going to be about $761,000, and you're counting on or hoping to get the $250,000 grants. So that's going to give you about 500,000. So you're planning to fundraise the remaining 260 plus?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Are you concerned at all about the viability of getting those two grants?
Definitely. I mean, I think when you're applying for grants, there's always a concern. And again, it's a competitive grant. There's no given here. Again, we're not going to solely base our success of this project on this, because ultimately we can make this happen without these particular grants. But these grants are specifically for what we're trying to do. Okay. And we've, to that end, I've asked that question a lot. because I'm curious of the entity as well. There's obviously been funding cuts throughout the nation for various causes, and I wanted to make sure that we're not barking up a tree that's not gonna be fruitful. And I truly don't feel like that's the case. I feel again that it serves a need. It serves a tangible need. It's not like we're going out to fix a gable on some roof that's historic that, you know, it's lived in by one person. This is a building that gets utilized by thousands of people annually. We do feel confident that we'll be able to get those grants through that entity. But to that point, should those not come to fruition, we feel confident that we'll be able to pursue other avenues that we'll be able to get to that number.
So worst come to worst, you think we can still raise the?
Absolutely. I think if we got $0, we'll still be able to get this project done.
Count me as a friend of City Park.
Well, thank you very much.
You bet.
Sure. The chair will recognize Councilor Dante.
I'm gonna cue off of what he was just talking about. So if you are unable to get the grants, I take it your plan B would be donations.
That's correct.
And if you end up doing that, would that slow down the project?
There is a chance that slowed down the project, but frankly, you know, we're writing in the milestones that I've shared with the administration are really dictated around timelines. We intend to hit these timelines. If we don't get the grant money as we're hoping we will, that will affect the time at which that money comes in, but we feel like we can fill that void should there be that void. And we feel that we can fill it in the same timeline that we've already proposed. So yeah, a lot of this, it looks like it's heavily hinged on the History Colorado grants. That's really the big one that I wanted to focus on because that's why I'm here tonight asking for the you know, approval on next week's agenda. But in between, and to Councilor Latino's point, and Ms. Martinez had shared a lot of those other grants that are available out there, and they're extensive. So we intend to apply for everything that we can to under the sun. I think, you know, it's in the millions of dollars that we could ultimately, you know, go after. That's the types of grants that are available, but we want to be fairly conservative. We don't feel like we need to go after everything and, you know, get what we need to get this project done and, you know, potentially go on to the next one. But just to that point of not getting grants, I've been in constant discussions really since this project's been going on, and those commitments have grown, you know, every month that people are interested in chipping in, donating here or there. And I know it sounds kind of like hooey, but we really feel strongly about this this participation from suppliers, contractors, laborers, and ultimately the biggest cost oftentimes with these projects is cost of materials, cost of labor. And if we can offset those by 25%, maybe 50% by donated labor, and what is that? That's friends of mine or friends of friends that want to pitch in. And I think it's an extremely cool thing that people are willing to do that, but it's tangible, it's true. And my brothers already are the ones that are going to hopefully be laying the tile, and it's things like that. So it's a real thing. It can save costs. It can create this atmosphere where people are interested in seeing the success of this project.
Thank you.
Chair will recognize Councilor Gomez.
Yeah, George, just for, excuse me, just for a point of reference. How long are the Friends of the Park, excuse me, City Park? How many days have you guys been on this project? The Saving the Project part of this? Has it been a year, 2 years?
I think Friends of City Park, the entity, we've been established for about a year now. We formed after the RFP was put out, and we had put a proposal to the city. I think it was last March or April, so about a year. But the interest in this particular project would go, I forget the date, quite frankly, but I was in front of after you guys up here. It would have been back to when the initial planned demolition had been put out, and that's when this all really.
And you said the projected end date was when? If you could get everything at the grants?
Sure. Yeah, we're projecting middle of or the summer of 2027, perhaps a little bit sooner.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilors, any other questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move forward with our agenda. Thank you, Mr. Concilia, for coming in, being with us this evening.
Thank you all.
You.
Okay. Moving forward with our agenda, the chair will recognize Miss Melissa Cook and Miss Gina Lopez Ferguson for CSAC recommendations.
Good evening, Council. I will kick us off. Hello, everyone. I'm Melissa Cook, the Director of Housing and Citizen Services. And with me, I have Gina Lopez Ferguson, who is the CSAC Board Chair. And what we are doing here tonight is bringing forth the recommendations that the CSAC Board has worked diligently on for the last several months, given the allotments that they do have. So first, I would like to say that generally, these recommendations happened several months earlier. Because of the county's budget situation, we have had to wait on these recommendations. So these are for the 2026 year, which obviously we're already into May. But that was the reason for that delay. Additionally, this next week, you will be seeing on the agenda an intergovernmental agreement that will bring some of changes to the CSAC Commission as you've known it. For the last 20 years, over 20 years, since CSAC has been in, since it was created between the city and the county has actually been the one who has administered the program. Those duties are coming over to the city. And we are excited about the opportunity just to ensure transparency and reporting within the CSAC program within the city staff. So you will be seeing that as well this upcoming week. Before I kick it over to Gina, I just want to first thank all of the CSAC members. I didn't realize until stepping into this role, the intense work that the CSAC members do. It really is a very, very hands-on board. They really do look at every one of these applications very intensely. So I just want to say thank you to all of them. And with that, Gina, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much for having us today. Is this my clicker?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, so to start us off, I do want to recognize we have a couple CSAC members with us today. Sandra Shear, she is our secretary, and our new, one of our newer commission members, Ron Wiley. So they are here today, so thank you for being here. Because there are some new folks on council, I wanted to take a quick moment to just give a quick history of what CSAC is. The Community Service Advisory Commission is a volunteer board, and we have been tasked to review requests submitted by local nonprofits for funding through the pot of money from the city as well as the county. It was established in 2003 with the hope of minimizing duplication of services for both the city and the county. The commission is made up of 15 members, a total of 14 appointed by the city and county. The United Way of Pueblo County has a standing member who can vote, always a part of the commission. And recruiting responsibilities goes back and forth between the city and the county just because of the time it takes to recruit and onboard those members. So who is CSAC? This is our current membership roster. It is actually a very diverse group of individuals, which is definitely holds true to the spirit of what CSAC is. There is no one political party that is overrepresented in this commission. We all have very diverse backgrounds. So there are many voices, which is great, but sometimes it could make for some long conversations. Some highlights from our 2025-2026 cycle is we, for the first time, CSAC hosted a information session at Rawlings Library, and we had over 35 attendees. So many foundations or grant makers will have webinars or information for grantees to be able to learn about the application process. And we thought it was time for us to be able to support our community a little bit better by hosting that. This year, there was a minimum of 97 hours per board member. who volunteered, and that included monthly meetings, extended planning sessions, reviewing hundreds of pages of documentation for applications. And I would say for myself as chair, I was thankful enough to be able to have some release time for my job to serve in this role. So you could probably double those hours for this past year. One of my goals as chair last year was to institute ongoing learnings for the commission. I wanted to make sure that members were informed about what was happening in community as well as within the nonprofit sector, not only locally, but nationally, discussing the funding landscape in and of itself. So monthly, I provided articles, videos. We dove into various data dashboards to look at what was happening in our community, and just to make sure that we had a very strong knowledge base to ensure that we were making informed grant-making decisions. Okay, so who can apply to receive CSAC funding? Really, if you are a 501c3 and can find a way to fit into 13 different categories, you are eligible to apply for CSAC funding. One caveat is we do not provide grants for individuals or for political or religious activities. So if there is an organization that may be affiliated with a church, as long as they are not evangelizing or have restrictions on services based on religious preferences, they are able to apply for funding if they're providing basic needs to the community. Required documentation, everybody has to submit a letter of intent, a scope of service, which is about 2 pages, executive summary sheets, IRS 990 or audit, and a certificate of good standing. The commission reviews this information. However, it is the role of the county to ensure that all of those pieces are in order. So I do want to take a couple minutes to talk about our portfolio for 2026. The 2026 grant cycle brought a notable surge in interest from Pueblo County's nonprofit sector. CSAC received applications from 39 organizations requesting a total of $2,353,697, an increase of more than 33% in terms of dollars, but we had an increase of 39% in applications. And a lot of this has to do, this growth reflects both the community's ongoing needs and the value placed on CSAC funding as a resource for sustainable and expanding local programs. Current 2025 grantees make up the largest share of applicants at 53.9%, reflecting a strong demand to sustain existing programs. New applicants represent 28.2% of submissions, a likely result of limited funding opportunities and restrictions within the City of Pueblo's funding streams. Past but not current grantees accounted for 18%, demonstrating that organizations continue to seek CSAC as a valuable funding source. Applications were submitted in 12 of the eligible funding categories, and this underscored the broad range of needs within the community. Youth services accounted for the largest share of requests at 24%, reflecting both the community's emphasis on supporting young people and the growing complexity of youth-related challenges. Disability services followed at 16%, highlighting the demand for programs that increase accessibility, independence, and quality of life for residents with disabilities. Health services represented 16% of the total applicants, and that continues to be a major area of focus for Pueblo County's health disparities. And for categorization purposes, we did use the World Health Organization's definition of health, which is a state of complete health, complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease. One thing to know is there has not been a perfect way for us to categorize these requests. That is one thing that we would like to do moving forward so we can look more deeply at the areas that we're funding. And so this year's portfolio reflects both stability and the mounting urgency in Pueblo County's nonprofit sector. Established programs seek continued investment to sustain essential services, while new and returning grantees work to diversify funding amid significant cuts at the local, state, and federal levels. Rising demand, higher cost, and fewer funding options have intensified competition for these limited resources. So this year, we had, as I mentioned, the 39 applications. Of those, we did fund 33. You could see that's a big chunk to cut. We only had $955,000 to work with this year. In terms of how that was distributed, youth services, those grants, 26% of those grants went to youth serving organizations, followed by health services, early childhood education, housing, homeless services. Of note, if there was anything dealing with food insecurity, we lumped that under homeless services. Disability services at 8%, senior services at 4%, cultural programs 3%, arts and music, as well as education, were at 2%, and finally, environmental conservation. Now, these categories were defined in the original IGA back in 2003, and so we would like to have those updated as well moving forward at some point. So these are our current funding recommendations. One thing that I will say is that because we had such an influx of new applicants, it was very hard to try to stretch the dollar for this grant cycle. And unfortunately, many of our long-term grantees or those who have been funded by CSEC over the years did see a decrease in funding in order to accommodate the increase in requests. And we will go category by category, again, remembering that this is not a perfect science of how these were categorized. For arts and music, we have Pueblo Arts Alliance, and I'm not sure if it's helpful for me to go line by line, or do you feel like you have the information? Okay. Perfect, you have all the information you need. So arts and music, a total of over 20,000 went to that. We did not fund Sangre de Cristo Arts and Conference Center. Cultural programs, we had one returning grantee, and that was still Work Center of the West. We had many strong advocates for the arts and culture on CSEC with some of the new members that came on, which was great to hear some fresh perspectives and folks advocating for those areas. Disability services, Center for Self-Reliance and the ARC were our two returning organizations. And for early childhood education, we had Eastside Childcare and Southside Children's Center, who both have been returning grantees as well. We did have 3 requests under the economic development. Unfortunately, we did not choose to make any recommendations at this or for this cycle. And for education, SEL Tutoring is our returning grant recipient from the 2025 last cycle. We had 3 requests that we categorized under the environmental conservation category. We did award $11,000 to the Pueblo Zoo. We did not, however, provide funding to Nature Wildlife Discovery Center or the Humane Society of Pikes Peak region. Health services, as you can see, we had a lot of returning grant recipients in this area. Bits of Freedom, which was an equine therapy organization. They did receive funding for the first time. Under homeless services, we continue to fund and support Pueblo Community Soup Kitchen as well as Pueblo Cooperative Care. For the first time, we have a organization from Colorado City Rye area, which is very exciting for us. So Sangre de Cristo Volunteers for Community received some funding. Posada for housing, we did not have any requests for recreation, and SRDA did come back for funding this year after last year they did not. And we did award them for the 37,000. Youth Services. First Tee of Southern Colorado has been working hard to expand their programs here in Pueblo County. So the board did provide a little bit of funding to help support expanding to a couple schools locally. But otherwise, Boys and Girls Club, Casa of Pueblo, Mariposa Center for Safety, and Pueblo Child Advocacy Center continue to receive our recommendations. With Mariposa Center for Safety, in addition to their usual operations, this request was specifically for Teresa's Place in order to expand hours for the safe visitation transfers for young people in the county. And we have provided you with a document that has the requested amount as well as, yes. So you have all the information you need, including the historic funding. Questions?
Thank you. The chair will now open up time for questions, counselors. First, I see Counselor Boston. So I'll recognize Counselor Boston and Counselor Dante.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, thanks for that report. I know it's not easy to have so many different people fighting over a pot of money and then try to figure out what you should actually allocate. I did have a question. I do see specifically on 3 different applicants that you have chosen to reward. Their request summary is in relation to salaries. I think I kind of see some concern personally when you have funds kind of paying for salaries more so than services. Is there any limit to what the requests can kind of be or what they're kind of segmented for usually?
There is not. And actually, that was a discussion that we had had as a commission early on in the process if we would be willing to support general operating. And we decided that it was a vital need. There are a lot, being a funder and understanding the funding landscape, there are many organizations that are willing to step up and pay for all the programs and all the great exciting programs. But if you don't have staff to run those programs, they're not going to happen. So we can give $10,000 for an after-school program for snacks or curriculum, but if we don't have counselors to actually oversee those programming, it's not going to be effective. So even though it may outline staff salaries, that could be tied to a programmatic request. But we do feel that having qualified, good employees is important. And we all know that within the nonprofit landscape right now, historically, they're greatly under-resourced in terms of salary bases. And so whatever we can do to help retain quality staff to provide excellent service for the community, that's a priority for us. It helps with the sustainability of the organization.
Okay, and then the other question I had is you had a breakdown of the different categories and the percentage of funding that was received by different categories. Obviously, I guess you could say some categories might be of a higher need or more importance to the community. Is there any rhyme or reason of how you get to those funding levels for certain categories or why you choose certain ones over others?
We use a lot of the information that we learned over the course of our learnings, right? So that's the best way to say this. So I will say that we did focus primarily on basic needs. And if you can think back to what the fall was like starting in August until November and what was happening through federal cuts, state cuts, and even local cuts, we use that information to really inform how we prioritize requests. Additionally, it's just, we're in community. So whatever we saw in my role or with United Way was seeing, as well as our other community volunteers, they advocated for what they saw.
And if I could just add to that, Counselor Boston, I think that the answer really lies within the CSAC members themselves. It's a very unique group that, you know, city and county came together many years ago and decided to put together to get those outside perspectives. So right now, as the IGA is written, it just lists all of the 13 broad categories. We had several, you were involved in the work sessions that we had this last year with the city councilors and the Board of County Commissioners. And we talked about that. We talked about grouping funding. We know, I mean, I think anybody who looks at this knows that likely arts and culture may not be at the top of the list when we have people who are not being fed. And so we talked about, you know, putting carve outs for certain things. Ultimately, you know, it wasn't necessarily something that I think the counselors or county commissioners, well, I think there were some that wanted to do this. It wasn't necessarily unanimous. And so that was not something that ended up being put into the new IGA, which will come before you on first reading next week. But I think that that's the intent of CSAC, was that you have all of these diverse opinions and they each come in there with their different high importance items.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the work you've done on this. I'm sure it's a real big job. And I realize that a lot of the nonprofits don't request the same amount of money. But my question kind of relates to criteria, because I'm seeing 6 with 0 amount, and then 4,000, and then as high as almost 100,000. And then it just kind of zigzags all over the place. So my question is, what kind of criteria do you use to decide on the amounts?
I'd like to say we had a perfect system in place. We do use a rubric to look at our applications, and some of that scoring provides us a baseline for discussion. But a lot of it goes back to what the commission views as highest need for the community. And we prioritize based on that. So during that time, or during the fall, you know, we saw a lot of issues with SNAP benefits being frozen, and a lot of issues dealing with food insecurity, housing insecurity. Those were all issues that we saw as a huge issue within, you know, Pueblo. Affordable housing across the board is a huge need here locally. And so looking at those type of statistics and our experiences is how we prioritize, you know, those asks. I think it's important to note that because we have such a diverse group of, you know, CSAC folks, that's where you might see the lower numbers when it comes to the arts and culture allocations. But it may not be big, but I hate to say, but it is something. And our commission members were very passionate about, hey, you may have, you know, basic needs, and that, of course, we want to make sure is met, but we also want to have a community that is rich in culture and provides opportunities to engage, you know, in the arts. So we did try to carve out a little bit, but a lot of it has to do with just the greatest needs, and we also balance kind of what the requests are as well. So some of the smaller organizations were requesting maybe $15,000, whereas some of the larger ones were all the way upwards of 200,000. We don't do any sort of percentage across the board. Every single request is looked at individually and decided upon one at a time.
Okay, thank you.
The chair will recognize Councilor Hernandez.
Thank you very much for your hard work. We appreciate you. Just a couple of questions. I noticed that of the 39, 6 did not get any funding at all. Was there any thought given to, these are the applicants we got, let's figure out a way to give everybody something so that we're not leaving anybody out?
Absolutely. And actually on the commission, we had one individual who was very much like, if they apply, they meet the criteria, we should give them the funding. I think it did come back to the thought of, if our community's basic needs are not being met, who do we take from one organization to give to another organization? And I think that at the end of the day, it just came to the thought of if this organization were to disappear tomorrow, what would be the implications for Pueblo County? That was one of the ways that, in my mind, I was able to say, well, they do great work. They also have not received funding from us last year, so they have not been dependent or received CSEC funding in the past. And so in that was honestly one of the ways that we were able to make those decisions. It's a lot easier to say no to an organization that has not depended on CSEC funding in the past versus one that has. And we did, unfortunately, like I had mentioned, had to cut back even with the our returning grantees. And we did fund quite a few newer organizations as well this time around. But unfortunately, we just don't have enough.
Did you give any consideration to their own fundraising activities with regards to the percentage of their total budget and what they asked?
Yeah, so we do look at their financials. We actually ask for a description during their interview process about what their current funding landscape is for their organization, how they've been affected by federal and state cuts. A lot of them did talk about that during their application process. So we did look at that. Those were all just part of the financials. But everybody's getting cut right now. Nobody has more than they can spare.
Right. Just one more thing on what Brett brought up earlier about Councilor Boston about funding payroll. So I have some experience with a couple of the people on your list. And both of them received money, even though they already receive funding for the services that they provide. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody, but it does to me because it's my experience with those types of organizations. What I'm saying is that a couple of them are a fee-for-service provider. And so they're also asking for
Funding as well.
nonprofit dollars as well. And part of their agreement with the state of Colorado is that they have to fundraise a certain amount of their budget outside of what the state provides for them.
Correct.
That was kind of my concern about the same thing. Why are we paying salaries for people outside of services?
Yes, I do
that
see.
aren't already funded.
Right.
Excuse me.
It can be very complicated. And I think that especially if you start looking at Medicaid reimbursable organizations, with the decrease in what those reimbursable rates are for some of those, there's a huge gap still. But it's complicated. And so if you do have concerns, definitely feel free to reach out or provide us with that information for consideration in our upcoming cycle.
Yeah, and Councilor Hernandez, just to further explain on that, this work session here is about the funding recommendations. We have an entirely different process happening right now where we are working with Pueblo County to be on first reading this upcoming Monday. We're updating the intergovernmental agreement for the first time since 2003. We went through a lot of work sessions last year, as I mentioned, with the county, with the city. That was something that was discussed. Should we fund operations? Should we prioritize first-time applicants? There's a lot of these different things. And so you're going to see that there are going to be some changes on the ordinance coming next week. This was not intended to be that, but it's not going to be that people are not eligible. It's going to be that there are priorities for, and one of them is that we would prioritize going forward non-operations, that we would prioritize programs over operations with a carve out, with certain carve outs. So you'll hear more about that in the staff report. That's something that the county commissioners and city council and all of the two county and city attorneys have been working on.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Would y'all recognize Councilor Gomez?
Yeah, I understand this is complicated stuff. And I'm not just saying this, I did get several calls in reference to the Downtown Association, and maybe there's some merit into what Ted had said. I think they were at 15,000, now they're going to 0. And in reference to, if I got that right, check them and see if that shit.
They have not received funding from us in the past.
They have not received funding from you.
Correct.
I thought they were at 15,000.
They had requested 15,000.
Now, in reference to his comment about if we could if you go from a certain number down to zero, is there a halfway mark? Because getting that kind of hit, I could understand what you're saying, that it could really hurt, but can we do it half and half? Do we have to always come back and say, well, what did you get last year? But if we could split it up, I mean, I'm just throwing this out because how do you make it easier? My concern is I'm looking for models to help me if I'm going to look at historic downtown Bessemer and see what that kind of funding look like for other organizations. Is that how that model would work if I need to do something down in my district and we are cutting? Like, I know you're not, but if there are cuts coming into associations and do we have anything we're going right to zero from a certain set number down to zero on any of these? In funding?
Well,
From year to year, are we going down to zero?
To be clear, there is no set number.
Okay.
Each individual grant cycle is completely independent from the others.
Okay.
They did not receive funding. So they previously,
Today, but so.
they did, so yeah, let me explain because I could see how this could be confused.
Yeah.
They had previously received funding through the city of Pueblo, through our non-departmentals. We did not do that this year. So for those that didn't receive it, we did notify them that they could apply through CSAC. It is my understanding, though, that the Downtown Association was still funded through the city of Pueblo's Parks Department. I don't know what that funding level was. So in general, I think what they're saying is we had our funding cut from the city. I think that people get very confused between non-departmental directly from the city or county and CSAC and which is which bucket, and that's fair. But it is my understanding that they did still receive city funding. I believe it was in the amount of $35,000 in the parks budget.
Do you require, in reference to meeting maybe some sustainability or self-sufficiency for these organizations, you require them to put together their own grant writing teams, their fundraising? Is that anything you have to, you take a look at, or that can't be mandatory, I will take it. But is that something we could look at for them to get them away? Some of these guys have been on the dole pretty long, for lack of a better term. I know that offends everybody when I say that. But how do we do it where we can get them to use their own mission as a vehicle to raise the money that they should be raising, in my estimation, to sustain themselves?
I mean, I think that is the hope of every foundation or every organization, that organizations become sustainable on their own. What I will say is that although that would be amazing right now, given the huge, massive cuts at the federal and state level for funding for these organizations, I think it's going to be a long time before a lot of these organizations can stand on their own. And it's not for lack of trying. It's because if you can imagine, for nonprofits, you know, a sign of being a very fiscally strong organization was to not have to get a lot of private grants. If they had state and federal grants, that was what was sustaining them. But now with those cuts, they're having to completely restructure how they are requesting funds. And it's just not a good landscape. And I think that there are things that we can do to help support organizations to become more sustainable. But some of that is general operating support. So when we talk about wanting to cut that, that money can go towards funding, you know, grant writers, doing fundraisers, and all of those things that, you know, tend to fall underneath the umbrella of general operating. That is an area that we can continue to support the organizations.
In a sense, I mean, I was looking up some research and they said it could be as high as $350 billion that was left. We had more grants offered this year than any other time in history. And I'm just curious, are we enabling somehow, maybe when we are helping and for such a long time? I can't give you the actual time limits of each organization, but there's been some guys that have on this for a long time. Are we somehow enabling them not to go out there and get their own mechanisms where they can raise money by providing this all the time?
I would like to say, I mean, honestly, I don't think so. Because at the end of the day, if they can't bring in funding, like for example, foundations, they are receiving just as more requests than ever before as well. And so the competition for all grants is so high, and grants are getting smaller in size for these organizations, that I think it's tough.
Does CSAC have a grant team?
In terms of grant writing?
Yes.
No. we just review the grants. And
It'd be
so
Interesting to look at. I'm just curious, but.
Well, CSAC does have one member from United Way, and while it's separate from CSAC, of course, United Way has some opportunities. They just held a grant writing seminar, so I understand what you're saying, and I think that everybody on CSAC would probably agree that we need to provide resources to them to be able to go out and find their own resources.
absolutely. And just, also the organizations that are coming to us, you have organizations that do have grant writers on staff, and that's what they do 40 hours a week. And then you have executive directors, particularly at our amazing childcare centers, who are tasked with writing grants. So on top of fully running organizations, they're writing grants in their spare time, which that doesn't actually exist, while they're subbing for classes and managing the CCAP freezes throughout the state and trying to retain staff. So we just need to help our organizations build capacity. And what does that look like? My organization that I work for, we invest deeply in that for our organizations. But it's a systemic issue right now.
It's just in my estimation, and I'm not trying to be a broken record, but I do believe we're not meeting the qualifications for 3 to 5 grant writers that I think this city could use. I think you'll best your chances if the more people you have writing the grants, and even doing things like marrying them into the grant, make them a project manager for a grant project manager. Some of those salaries could be absorbed by that. I think you're aware of that. But I'm just thinking by just having one grant writer, and I wish her well. She works hard. I know who she is. And I think she just needs help. That's just my opinion. But for what it's worth, thank you.
Thank you. Chair will move on. Thank you. Chair will recognize Councilor Boston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I heard one of your comments earlier that you turned people down because they didn't have a history. And then I see some people you did accept that didn't have a history. And I just didn't really like your response on that one. But I also see some other people here that you referenced. And specifically, since we talked about the Downtown Association, you said was funded through Parks and Rec. There's also the Pueblo Zoo who got almost $1 million that was funded, and they're on here. So I'm kind of seeing some inconsistency in some of the decision-making process. And, I'm sure there's reasonings and there's justification by the different board members. I get it's vast, but I see some irregularities and some things that aren't consistent.
Understandable. And I would say that keep in mind the timeline that these were happening. So I believe at the time the Pueblo Zoo it was before they came back and was able to receive some additional funding through the city, that's when they came to get interviewed with us. So at the time, there was a significant need, and we felt that we wanted to support their youth programming. But again, it's on every other given, month, there was something new happening. And so all of those changes really informed the who, what, where, and why. So yeah, there were some that we did not fund. But you look at the soup kitchen, and we decided to fully fund them because at the time, people needed to get fed and families were going there, which was an unusual circumstance for that organization. So we prioritized them. But that was a real-time shift in possible priorities. If we had had the same portfolio 2 years ago, it would be completely different. So, we just try to do the best that we can with the information that we have in that moment. And we made these decisions early in November, coming off of an October interview session, and the applications that were submitted to us were submitted in July. So much changes. Like the landscape it's been unprecedented how kind of crazy the process has been. We are working towards creating a more equitable process. Those are conversations that we are already having. We had an after action review. We now have teams working on reviewing how we are scoring applications, how we're doing site visits, how we are prioritizing funding. And there's a lot of things in the works right now because we do realize this is not a perfect process. And not to mention that we are just a group of volunteers. We are not professional philanthropists. I am. This is what I do 60 hours a week. But for the rest of my group, we're just community volunteers who care about Pueblo County. And so we are trying to make strides. We have not had a system in place to really support us administratively. So everything that we have been doing has been what I've been able to put together, and through also the hard work from our commission who work outside of our times to create a better process. But, we are committed to strong, equitable, sustainable grant making. And I think by this time next year, it'll be a different conversation. But I'm very proud of what we've done.
Thank you.
Chair, I'll recognize Councilor Latino.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for what you've done. I see here there are a lot of the money here, basically a majority of this money has gone to various charitable organizations. Well, I wouldn't call them all charitable. The Boys and Girls Club is one. Catholic Charities, Southside Children's Center, Posada, Mariposa, and the Colorado Bluesky Enterprise, $300,000. Talk to me a little bit about that.
In terms of Colorado Blue Skies request, or with
Yeah.
Counselor Latino, do you mean why those particular ones are a little bit larger than the others?
I guess that's my major concern. And then we got, as I said, the Colorado, is it says, it's got it
Blue Skies.
Blue Skies Enterprise. I said Bluesky.
It's okay.
We need to laugh a little bit in this world, folks, and if you don't laugh, you cry. And when you cry alone. If you laugh, the whole world laughs with you. But anyway, thank you. If you would explain that to me, I'd appreciate that.
In terms of why we chose to fund those organizations in particular, or the amounts that.
Well, the Blue Sky Enterprise.
Colorado Blue Sky Enterprises, they had a request of $300,000, and we awarded them the $40,000. They had lost a significant, all of their funding for the staffing as part of one of the grants and restructuring of the state. And so in our minds, they provide essential services for young people or children, I believe ages 0 to 5, to navigate the disability resources landscape. And so it's a very small percentage of what their actual request was.
Anytime you talk about young people with me, that's where the majority of the money should go. When we're talking about adults, that's a whole nother story. Kids are the victims of adults' actions and reactions. And my major concern, just like my district is my major concern, not only are the people on the east side, but the children on the east side. Okay? We have El Centro de Quinta Sol, which is a great area. Yeah, I mean, a great program, facility and that we have the skate park, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's a great asset to that community. We have a lot of other things as it relates to El Centro de Quinta Sol, but we have out in Dog Patch, we have the programs out there in the summertime with softball and baseball, and those are things that are important to me. Bradford Park, we have the facility up there where we have football, et cetera.
Excuse me, Councilor Latino, if you can please, about 1 more minute, please, because we have to move on. Thank you.
Anyway, again, my major concern are children. Okay. And that's where the majority of money should always go. Adults, that's a whole nother thing. They can figure it out. Kids are, again, reliant upon the adults. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Less than a minute.
The chair will acknowledge Councilor Hernandez for 1 minute.
It won't take me that long. I just wanted to say, thank you very much. I know this is really, really hard work. Picking winners and losers is very, very tough. So thank you. It's good work. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Appreciate. Any other questions? All right, we appreciate your time. Thank you for coming to be with us.
Thank you.
All right. All right, moving on to the agenda tonight, we will move on with city council board and commission updates. Counselors, do any of you have if you'll turn on your light, if you have an update? Oh. Okay. Well, the chair will acknowledge Councilor Hernandez for 1 minute update.
Okay, so quickly, I sit on the Southern Colorado Building Commission, the Latino Chamber of Commerce, and the Pueblo Chamber of Commerce. Is that it, Mayor? I think that's it, right? Thank you. All three of those organizations right now are working very diligently through their budget process, and approving budgets and reviewing budgets still. So especially SoCo. That's basically all I have. Everybody's working really, really hard, and I appreciate their hard work. Oh, PACOG too. PACOG's fun.
PACOG.
Thanks, man. Also sit on PACOG, which works with the Colorado Department of Transportation, which we all sit on that one. And I think there's lots of really, really exciting things coming to Pueblo with regards to transportation and some of the work that CDOT's going to do. However, there's lots of things that CDOT is not doing for Pueblo that we are going to work our tails off this year and get some stuff done for Pueblo. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair will recognize Councilor Gomez.
I sit on PACOG and I sit on PDF, the Pueblo Development Foundation. I'll leave the PACOG to go that way to Brett. But the PDF Foundation, we haven't seen any reimbursements paid to them. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot here. But I am concerned that unless we start paying attention to that obligation we have and paying back reimbursements, we could be in Tabor trouble now. And some of the research I've been finding out now, if you ignore it that long, you could be in serious trouble. So for what it's worth, I just want to put that out there, but that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair will recognize Councilor Dante.
Yes. So I sit on Fountain Creek Watershed District. I'll keep talking. I sit on the Fountain Creek Watershed District, the Homeless Commission, ADA Committee, and PACOG. Fountain Creek Watershed District, I'm still in the learning process, so I've been told about different projects that are going on along the along the Fountain Creek. But as I said, I'm just learning about all this stuff. For the ADA committee, for those that are, what's ADA stand for?
Disabilities.
That's it. For those that are disabled, you can contact ADA and they will take your concerns and they will go out and talk to whatever location you're talking about. They did bring up the location on sidewalks along St. Mary Corwin having some problems because people with wheelchairs are having a hard time getting to the hospital because of the sidewalks. I'm also on Homeless Commission, and we have a meeting on Friday. We're going to tweak our bylaws and we're going to work on a designated campsite initiative that was put out there in 2024 and do some tweaks to it as well. And as for PACOG, there were some interesting facts that were given out. One was on fatalities. It told us where the most fatalities were on what streets, as well as what kind of fatalities they were, whether they were rear end, broadside, motorcycle, and those were very interesting facts. I'm done.
I sit on PACOG. We'll start there. As everybody said, some of the updates. This was kind of a slower meeting this month. Next month will be the important one where we'll go over all of our project updates with CDOT. But to double down on what Councilman Hernandez said, we're going to really try to make sure Pueblo gets remembered by CDOT and we get our piece of the pie that we are deserving of. I also sit on urban renewal. Nothing too crazy has happened recently besides we should be announcing a new executive director position here before long, so that vacancy will hopefully be filled. We also had a TIF 101 training for tax increment financing. Hopefully, all the new counselors that attended learned a lot, and everybody else there, so that we can continue utilizing that tool to develop Pueblo. I am also the urban renewal representative on the Harp Foundation. No new updates really with the foundation, just still waiting on that boathouse to open. And the final board I sit on is planning and zoning. Nothing too exciting on planning and zoning happening right now, just some very minor subdivisions. I guess the biggest one being down south of town. Otherwise, I think that's all I have.
I don't have any new updates as of the last meeting. I'm going to stay silent on the boathouse because I've announced it's opening 4 times and it's still not open. So I'm gonna, I'll say, I have no idea when the boathouse is gonna open. As soon as that elevator is working, we're gonna have it open. So that's all I've got.
Thank you. Councilor Latino?
I'm on the PACOG board as well. I brought forth last week my concerns as it relates to work that hasn't been done that supposedly they've turned over to the city. Speaking about the area of City Center Drive across from Enterprise in the Goat Hill area, which is the greatest area in the whole city, Goat Hill. And the fact that they have put landscaping there in terms of trees, an irrigation system, but there's weeds growing everywhere. And nobody's doing anything about it. And supposedly it's the city's responsibility now. That doesn't help enhance the demographics or the beauty of this community when you got people going up and down I-25 in 4 lanes. And we have the walls there now. Maybe that shutters a little bit of the vision of the plighted area there. But it's sad. It's sad. Really is sad. And we need some help from the city actually to get on there. And if I was coaching and Mr. Hernandez understands this, coach does, I'd be using other words, but I'm not going to use other words in a public setting. It's very disheartening. It really is. And that saddens me to no end. So I'm asking to get some help from the city, from the administration of the city to help forward. And I know you got your hands full, Mayor and Brian, but we need some help with this operation. In terms of the airport board, everything seems to be going well there. There's some things that we're doing out there, and I was unable to attend the last meeting because we had a death in our family, and the memorial service occurred on the same day as the meeting. Sadly. Code enforcement. We have a problem there on Beach, and I reached out a few days ago to Code Enforcement Division down there on off of Ash and Cali and Beach. We have a contingent of a trailer with a number of individuals, and we need to do something about that. And that's a concern that I have. In addition, Diane, in terms of the organization that you're working with, Catholic Charities, the city gave Catholic Charities, they came forth and got the bid for $200,000. And we've done a lot of things as it relates to the homelessness. So probably your organization ought to get in touch with Joe Domko and Catholic Charities, because we've graduated 20 out of the 60 that we started.
Councilor Latino, if we can close up in about 1 minute, please.
In any case, if they would reach out to them, Catholic Charities has done a great job. We started out with 60 in the program. We've graduated 20. They're working full-time jobs. 3 of them are working full-time for the city. So again, this is a great program, and I'm gonna suggest that you get in touch with Joe Domko. Thank you.
As far as for myself, I serve on the Forfeited Property Committee and the Library District Committee. At this point, those are as needed committees and they have not yet met. I also have attended PACOG, and one of the couple of things that I've learned is they're implementing some new stoplights down in the Pueblo Boulevard off the interstate. One was by the Starbucks, and I'm happy to see that over the last week, that stoplight is now up there on Pueblo Boulevard, and it's really, really helpful, Pueblo Boulevard and Mirror Avenue. So looking forward to seeing what the rest of those light infrastructures are going to do to help in that area. Okay. All right, at this time, we will move forward to the next piece of our agenda, which is moving into executive.
Madam
Meeting
Chair, I
and
move to
entertain a
go into executive session for the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations and or instructing negotiators under CRS section 24-6-402, parent 4, parent E. And the following additional details are provided for identification purposes. 2027 collective bargaining agreements.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The council will now move into executive session.
Roger, I said 6-1.
Elena, you're in it. This is where we are.
The time is now 8:25 PM and the executive session has been concluded. The participants were Counselor Hernandez, Counselor Gomez, Counselor Dante, myself, Counselor Boston, President Aliff, and Joe Latino, Mayor Graham, Brian Hines, Chief of Staff, Danny Nunn, Director of Finance, and Bob Yeager. For the record, if any person who participated in the executive session believes that any substantial discussion of any matters not included in the motion to go in an executive session occurred during the executive session or any improper action occurred during the executive session in violation of open meetings law, I would ask you to state your concern for the record. Seeing none, the agenda item is closed and this meeting is adjourned.